Jesus, the incarnation of Jesus Christ, and that's the central theme of the theology of the body. But we are right now going to be discussing the continuation of where we left off last time with the topic on love and responsibility. I know it's a little bit might get a little academic sometimes, but I'll try and make it as personal as possible. So, without much further ado, let me go and uh, start sharing the screen, and hopefully you can see the screen right now. Um, yeah, yeah. This was the key takeaway from uh, last session, which was a fortnight ago, 2 weeks ago, and in between, since I was in Nagpur, I couldn't take the previous session. So the key takeaway is, see, okay, I think I'll just uh, go back. Yeah, I hope you can see this screen. This is what we did last time. We are just going through very briefly through this book. Now, this is a very, I don't know whether you can see that it's actually quite dense. Okay. And by the grace of God, I'm trying to summarize this whole thing into a few slides, which is not very easy. So, uh, last fortnight, 2 weeks ago, we discussed the first and second chapters of this particular book called The Person and the Drive and The Person and Love. So, very briefly, I'd like to go through that just very quickly so that, you know, because it's been 2 weeks and we are having a little bit of a gap. So, so the first and foremost thing that is a human person is never to be used. All right. See, as I was preparing for, and every week I'm preparing for these sessions and try to read up on more material as much as I can. There was this something which I came across just recently about one particular student. See, this entire course, which later on becomes the book of love and responsibility, was taught as an ethics course by Pope John Paul II, that is Karol Wojtyła, in the University of Lublin or Lublin, I don't know how you pronounce it properly, Lublin maybe. And that course of ethics is what leads to this book. Okay, and in the course of this um, teaching of ethics, the students observed one thing, that he used to always speak about sexuality. So one of the students, it seems to have asked him a question as to why is it that since you're teaching ethics, and then why do you keep on talking about sexuality? Why is it so important? So Karol Wojtyła, who later on becomes Pope John Paul II, is supposed to have answered this. And he said, the reason is that the abuse of sexuality is the main obstacle to spirituality. I just, this is something new material for me. I just came to know about this statement by Pope John Paul II just recently. And I started reflecting on that. And the truth is that this is such a profound statement. I would like to just spend a few minutes just on this one statement and what struck me, because this is absolutely new for me. Said the abuse of sexuality is the main obstacle to spirituality. I was trying to wonder, I mean, how does that apply in my life? And the thing is, I mean, this is what I understood. So what I'm about to tell you is something very personal and something which I understood. See, the fact of the matter remains, as I was reflecting on just on this one line, I'll just repeat this line again. The abuse of sexuality is the main obstacle to spirituality. So let's be honest about it. I mean, every one of us, God created us as male and female. And just by creating us as male and female, sexuality is kind of by default part of the human existence. There is a sexual difference between a male and a female. There is. And that sexual difference is something which is deliberate and essential. Okay. Deliberate and essential. Without that difference, we would not be here. None of us would be alive. And that's an amazing thing. So, there is another thought which comes across. See, often we say that God treats everyone equally, and I have found that a little bit, yeah, you can say that probably, but I think I tend to differ from that statement. You might be surprised when I say that. I believe God treats everyone differently, but fairly. I'll repeat. God treats everyone differently, but fairly. This is my conclusion. I have not read this anywhere. This is my reflection and my understanding. God treats everyone differently, but fairly. Because God created each one of us differently. Now, difference doesn't mean there is inequality. Now, here is the problem. Because the moment God has created us male and female, there is by default and automatically there is a difference. And since there is a difference, we tend to assume or tend to accept that difference as if there is some sort of inequality. And that is not true at all. The difference is there for a reason. And the moment we accept that difference, only then will we be able to really understand what God intended when He created human beings. If you do not accept that difference, we will be damaging ourselves. Okay. So, the abuse of sexuality is the main obstacle to spirituality. That means, now, if I treat any person, we'll go back to this aspect of the personalistic norm. I've discussed this earlier. The personalistic norm, which Pope John Paul II talks about, is the essential manner in which a human being is supposed to treat another human being. That is, the personalistic norm is saying that the very essential way in which a person is supposed to be treated is with love, because a person is a person. You cannot treat a person like an object. Okay. Now, the moment you start using anybody, you are abusing the person. I'm not saying abusing a person is abuse. I'm saying when you use a person is abuse. That means when you use a person, you are degrading the person, making the person from being a person to becoming an object of some sort of gratification or utilitarian value or something of that sort. Okay. If I use a person, I am considering in some sense the person to be an object, and that means I am treating the person as somebody who's inferior in some manner. So I cannot treat a human being like that, because a human being is a person. This is an essential aspect which is really taught in this book, Love and Responsibility. And that's why we say that the opposite of love is use. And this is a phrase which John Paul II has come up in this book. It's a philosophical reflection. It's not theology in that sense. It's just reasoning, coming up to this particular conclusion that the human being is somebody who has to be respected at every moment, at every stage of life, and you cannot use a person. So when I start reflecting on these things, I am being changed internally. My attitude starts to change. My the way the if I can put it this way, the glasses through which I see another human person changes. My perspective changes. It's only when, like what Jesus says very clearly, you shall know the truth and the truth will set you free. When I come to know the truth, I have to reflect it in my mind and then it slowly transforms my being, and then my behavior, my speech, my actions, my thought process, everything starts changing. It's only when I hear and assimilate the truth that this happens. So even though sometimes certain things might sound very boring, but if it is a truth, and if you are willing to pay attention to the truth and reflect on the truth, truth will indeed set us free. And truth is both philosophical and theological. Philosophical because you can arrive at truth in a very systematic, reasonable manner. Because using the faculty of reason which God Himself has given us, we can arrive at some conclusion of truth. Not the fullness of truth, that is left to theology, but we can arrive at some conclusion of truth saying that, yeah, this is the way of being. All right. And that, to a great extent, is what we can call it as natural law. And natural law, in that sense, are applicable to every human being on the face of the earth, irrespective of what race or religion or anything that you are from. So again, we come back to this. I'll just summarize this as quickly as I can. So we are talking about the chapter 1, chapter 2, and then forward. So the first chapter says that the person and the drive, which is the sexual urge. So sexual urge is something which exists in every human being because we are sexual beings. All right. And in this sexual realm, a human being can never be used. So in the sexual realm, using a person to make the person into object, in the sexual realm, using a person is to make the person into an object for experiencing pleasure. And that is a strict no-no because you're talking about making the person into an object. Now, like I said earlier, every human person is a sexual being, and through the sexual urge is oriented towards a person of the opposite sex. Now, this might sound very controversial because if you're looking at it in the current scenario, when we are saying about same-sex attraction, and it doesn't matter what gender you belong to, gender is a construct of what is in your mind rather than who you are born as a person with what gender. So you're saying that sex is something which is assigned at birth. That's what the norm which is there right now. And gender is what you experience and feel within you. Okay. Now that is a complete no-no, because when we discuss it like that, then you are making a differentiation between the body and what is in you, which is the soul. So if your soul or your consciousness is telling you that you are something different from the physical entity that you are in, okay, then that means you are now treating the body as something subordinate to who you are within you. So you are kind of creating a rupture between the soul and the physical body. Let's be clear about one thing. All right. God created the soul and the body as a composite being. The body and the soul is one. And if I am created as a male, then I am a male. And if I am created as a female, then I am a female. There cannot be any differentiation. No matter how, whatever my feelings may be, my feelings are subjective. They have to be conformed to the truth, which is clearly written in our bodies, that I am a male and somebody else is a female. And that has to be accepted no matter how I may feel inside. All right. So this is something which has to be, because again, this is part of what we can understand as natural law, because every human being is either created male or female, irrespective of whether you're a Catholic, Protestant, Orthodox, Pentecostal, Muslim, Hindu, whatever, Sikh, or any other religion. It doesn't matter. And this aspect has to be accepted. This is the truth. Now, if you're going to play around with truth, then you're going to have a problem. And this sexual urge is oriented toward, and since there is a difference between the male and the female, there is a sexual urge or an attraction between the two. Now, that is natural and it is essential. And this is oriented towards procreation. Now, if it is not oriented towards procreation, then you can have any combination that you want, and it doesn't help, because God created us male and female in order that there may be a furthering of creation in that sense. And that is the norm which God created us. Now, if you are not going to accept that, then you will have a problem. And he said that love between persons demands a common good, being a gift to one another. And the command to love, which Jesus says, that you shall love one another as I have loved you, is rooted in the personalistic norm. The personalistic norm being that you are a gift to another person. So this understanding has, to a great extent, revolutionized my life. I remember, because when I reflect back into my own younger days, I still don't think I'm that old, but yeah, maybe 25, 30 years ago, when I was in my teens, the urge is something which was there, but then I didn't understand how that had to be oriented. It's only slowly, by the grace of God and by reading a lot of books, that I understood that this aspect, that my life is meant to further life. My life is meant to further life. Okay. That means my life is not meaningless. It is meaningful. It has to lead to a furthering of God's plan. And if I am participating in this, then my life will be joyful. This understanding kind of changed my trajectory of living. And this happened in my early 20s. Primarily, strangely enough, through reading on natural family planning. And then later on, I read Good News about Sexual Marriage by Christopher West. That came much later. But the book which I first read on sexuality, which really transformed my life, was a book called Answers in Marriage, which was again a surprise, because not written by Catholic, but written by a Protestant couple. And they were advocating natural family planning, which was a strange thing, because somehow natural family planning is kind of associated with the Catholic Church to a great extent. And but this book, Answers in Marriage, helped me to understand that my life is meant to further life. And that revolutionized my thinking, because my thinking at that particular point was that sex is something which is supposed to be just for my enjoyment. Okay, that the sexual faculty that I possess is only for my pleasure, for my enjoyment, for my whatever I do. And masturbation was perfectly normal. It was perfectly fine. What is wrong with that? Pornography was perfectly fine. It's just looking at a picture of some naked women. What is wrong with that? I'm not abusing anybody. You get the point. I'm not abusing anybody. So how can it be wrong? Till kind of scales fell off my eyes and I started recognizing that if my life is meant to further life, then I need to respect the other life through whom I hopefully one day later on would be able to further life. And if I am not having that respect, then I am automatically treating that person as an object. And then obviously when I started reading things on the theology of the body and later on, it changed my life. So trying to summarize this first chapter, this drive is essential, but this drive has to be oriented in the right manner. Okay. Then we look at the second chapter very quickly. Uh, what is love? He's discussing this in a very philosophical manner as what is love. So John Paul II talks about love as being fondness, as having desire, being benevolent, being being friendship, and then finally discusses what is spousal love. So fondness and attraction to the person of the opposite sex because the person is of the opposite sex. So again, like I said earlier, this attraction, if it is oriented into a person to the same sex, then there is a problem because that is kind of going against the natural law. Okay, there is a need for a difference between the sexes, and that need for the difference is what is supposed to cause the attraction. If there is sameness, then actually speaking, there should be some amount of, I'm not saying revulsion or rejection, but there cannot be the attraction which was meant between a man and a woman. But unfortunately, as we see in society, this is now become kind of par for the course, and saying everybody says it seems to be okay, but it's not okay. So then we move into the aspect of desire. It is something which we say need love, you know, and this desire is something which is essential, because if you look at what Saint Augustine himself says, he said, God, you created me for you, and until I meet you, I will not be fulfilled. Okay, so there is a need within man, a vacuum within man, which God Himself has created, and there man saying, I need love, and man is limited, and is not a self-sufficient being, and is need of another person, and this need is fulfilled through the marital covenant, which later on is a sign for a greater covenant, okay, which we'll discuss later. Okay, then we talk about benevolence, love as being benevolence, being the willing the good of the other human being, and this is the in an unconditional sense, this is more of what we associate with agape. Okay, then obviously love is friendship, which is a very famous line, the pyar dosti hai. So but then dosti in the sense of willing to sacrifice oneself for the other. Now that is also an aspect of love. All this is coming through reasoning. All right, so we are not stepped into theology or anything of that sort. And then this is what he discusses. Then of course you talk about spousal love. In betrothal or spousal love, there is a full communication of the person. That means I, as a human being, as a male, I'm giving myself completely to my spouse. It's a full surrendering of the self to one's spouse without losing possession of one's own self. Okay. So, in a sense, the two really become one, but they are distinct, but at the same time one. Okay. And this is the beauty of uh, what God intended, that the two really become one, which is supposed to point to something else, and which you will come to that. And I know quite a few of us who are listening may already have reached that particular stage of understanding that when we move to the theological aspect. But through reasoning itself, we can come to the conclusion that two are meant to be one. And this is a spousal love. So we just go through the key takeaways of what we did the last time. I know we're running short of time. Okay, to love and to be loved is essential for every human being. No human being can be reduced to an object of pleasure for another human being. To love is to will the good of the other. Again, this is the aspect of benevolence. And attraction is an essential element of love, but love cannot be reduced to mere attraction. And spousal love is all about becoming one. So this was a kind of summary of the previous session. So we'll now quickly move to chapter 3 of this book, where we talk about the person and chastity. Okay. Okay. So the word chastity, I've just put up the Polish because this is actually written in Polish, and I definitely don't know Polish, but I just put that up. It speaks of being free from all that makes dirty. Okay. Now this is this is what John Paul II is writing in this book. It's like this is something which we need to reflect on. Okay. Somehow, at least even in my school days, when we were just getting into puberty and stuff like that, maybe 13, 14, 15 years of age, sexuality was kind of understood to be dirty. Okay. No, yeah, you're not supposed to talk about all this. It's very dirty, all this boy girl, and all that. Now, since I come from Mumbai, it's सब गंदा है, अच्छा नहीं है. It's really not good. And to some extent, it is true because the way we are conditioned, we think that this is dirty. Because of our experience in some way of having looked at a man and woman's relationship, and we always found that there is some scandal going on. Something is wrong. So the understanding, even from kind of puberty age or whatever, that this is dirty. This is something which is to be done in a hidden way. It is something which is closed. It is something. So all that which is closed and all that is very dirty. Without really understanding that something which is hidden can be holy. Something which is hidden can be a treasure. Okay. So we already, even at a young age, most of us have understood this to be something dirty. And scales have to fall off our eyes, and we have to realize, no, it's not dirty. It is meant to be holy. And something which is holy has to be given reverence, and that is why it is hidden. It is sacred. It is private. It is separate. Because it is so good. It's not dirty. And then when I understood that, then I realized what chastity means. That first and foremost, I need to get away from this thinking that this is dirty. It's not dirty. And then, okay, if it's not dirty, then what is it supposed to be? It's supposed to be chaste. It's supposed to be holy. It's supposed to be reverent. That is something which kind of, in our heart of hearts, in our minds, we need to reflect upon and realize that it is something not which the devil has invented. It is something which God invented. And God not just said it is good, but he said it's very good. So that essential aspect of chastity, if we kind of imbue in our system, that truth will set us free. And by the grace of God, that truth has set me free. Okay, so let me continue. So Whitehever considered this sense of shame, and again, this is associated with the sense of shame, because let's reflect on, a chaste person will feel shame if he sees any disgraceful or shame less kind of act. Even if he is not a participant, if he is a person who is just witnessing some act, or let's say some person who is walking across the place half naked and uh, very, in a very, if I can put this word, debauched manner. If you just witness that, a person who's got a chaste mind will feel a sense of shame, even though he's not a participant. He's just looking. He's just witnessed something by accident, let's say, and that person will feel a sense of shame. A person who does not feel a sense of shame is not living a chaste life. When you see something which is, when somebody, let's say, somebody is degrading himself or herself in front of your eyes by walking around, in a very debauched manner, in a very, irreverent manner, and if you don't feel any sense of shame, that means in your heart, in your mind and your heart, you are not being chaste. That means there is something which needs to be transformed in your life. So chastity properly moderates pleasures pertaining to the conjugal act, and purity is an essential element of this chaste behavior. So what is the current norm? The current norm in our culture is that, now let's move into the aspect of contraception. The current norm is that contraception is normal. But contraception is against life and against love in the real sense. So, I mean, it's like if if somebody says that you're not, somebody says that I'm not using any contraceptive, it's kind of considered kind of abnormal. How is it that you're not using any contraception? That's become the norm now. Like I remember once me and my wife was having a little bit of a gynecological issue, and the normal usual gynecologist whom my wife used to go to wasn't available, so we had to, in a little bit of a emergency kind of a situation, we had to visit somebody else. And this gynecologist who didn't know us, and we walked in together. I mean, and I was carrying my third child, and he was just, I believe, 2 years old or something. I think even a little less than that. And she looked at us and she thought that it is maybe our first child, because we had not brought our elder two children. So she thought that it is just our first child. And then she asked, okay, so in that question, she asked us whether it's our first child. So I said, no, it's our third child. So we said, oh, you've not used sterilization. How come you have not been sterilized? This was a question which was raised to us. So it's become the norm, sterilization, contraception, all become the norm. So, but that is against love. That is against respect. Because if you are getting into the contraceptive mentality, then you are not behaving in a chaste manner. Because contraception by default is treating the person as an object. Please understand this. Why is a person getting into contraception? Because you do not want a child, right? And if you do not want a child, then the child is now become the enemy of your pleasure. Okay, the potential child, the child who would have come, is now has become an enemy in your mind of your pleasure that you are going to have. That means you are already making your own, hopefully, the child which was supposed to happen, who was supposed to come, you're already in your mind, you have already made yourself against him or her. Think what is happening in your thought process. You've turned your child into, an unwanted person, let's say. I mean, I don't even think these people think about that child as a person. But let's say I'm giving the benefit of the doubt and say the unwanted person. And then you are treating yourself and your spouse as just mere objects of pleasure or gratification. This is this is you're using one another. So when you're using one another, are you truly being loving? And if you really think about it, it's not love at all. Because in love, you're going to give yourself as a gift to the other person. That is a complete gift. And if that is not happening, how can you call it love? And this is a truth which needs to be shared to people. Because if you're not, and unfortunately, this is a culture now. We think that this is perfectly normal. But chaste behavior affirms the intrinsic worth of the person of the opposite sex. And like what I've already explained that, I believe, but the function of chastity is to remove the utilitarian impulse from the act of love. That is, liberate love from the attitude to use. So what does chastity do? In my thought, in my mind, in my actions, in my will, in my sensuality, in my affectivity, in all these aspects, my spouse, my wife, or my husband is not somebody whom I am going to use for my own gratification. Because if I'm getting into that kind of a thought process, I am now treating the person as not as a person. I am not giving the respect which is due to the person. I am making the person into an object. And this is honestly not right. Okay. Now, let's look at the last line which I mentioned here. Sensuality and affectivity provide the material for love. This is what John Paul II says. The sense that the sensuality that I have, the affection that is there in my heart and my mind, that is the material for love. But love is an act of the will, which is governed by chastity and is truly free. Because if I truly love, I will give myself completely. And that is an act of the will. It is a decision. Love is not something which is emotional. Love is an act of the will. If I decide truly and honorably and justly to love somebody, I will give myself completely as a self gift to that person. To the extent, uh, in what manner I am getting into a relationship with. If it is my spouse, then I am supposed to give my heart, mind, soul, strength, everything to her, and she to me. If it is to a friend, obviously there are limits. But again, I'm giving my help, my my compassion, my empathy, everything, even my strength to help and to ensure that I am willing the good of the other. And that is love. And that is based on this aspect of chastity, which means my intentions are pure, my thoughts are pure, and whatever I do, my actions are also clean and pure. This is what he talks about primarily in personal chastity. And then we go to sorry, yeah, we go to the other aspect, which is concupiscence. Again, we've already kind of described this. Concupiscence in the sexual sphere is a consistent tendency to see the persons of the opposite sex as objects of potential enjoyment. Obviously, I cannot be concupiscent, because if I am getting into that kind of a behavior, then It's something which is a complete no-no. Carnal or sensual desire. This arises when one sees the person of the opposite sex as an object for one's own gratification. Once his gratification is satisfied, the entire relation to the object ceases until this desire is awakened later, again at a later stage. So, is it truly love? Of course not. Because today I may feel attracted to one, tomorrow I may feel attracted to somebody else, then third day I will go and have attraction with something else, and it can lead to multiple issues whatsoever. So, like I said, the sensuality and affectivity provides a material for love, but this is not love. When sensuality is not governed by chastity, it leads to becoming material for sin. So, sensuality within me, that attraction that is there within me, has to be governed by chastity. It has to be governed by an act of the will. Only then will I be able to avoid sin. But let's also understand that sensuality or neither even concupiscence by itself is not sin. But what for sin can only be what proceeds from the will. Now, if I take a decision to see if I what is sin? Sin is something, an act of the will, which is contrary to love. What do I mean by that? Where or what does the church mean by that? It's not me, it's what the church teaches. When you truly love, you truly want to give yourself as a gift. When you don't love, then you want to gain, you want to use, you want to have power over the other person, and that is sin. And when I take a decision to that effect, then that sin bears fruit. So that is always the act of the will is something which is internal, but sin can be internal and or in the exterior actions. So this is basically the third chapter, and then we move to the fourth chapter of love and responsibility. We are reflecting on how can we do justice with respect to the Creator. This is what John Paul II talks about, and in this aspect, he says marriage has to be. We are going to be talking about marriage. We're going to be talking about in this chapter. We're going to be talking about polygamy and again family, contraception, uh, marital relationships, etc. We're talking about a vocation, okay, marital relationship and other vocations. So what is marriage? Marriage has to be indissoluble and monogamous. Now again, when we're talking about monogamous, we're talking about a relationship between a male and a female, not male male, not female female, or not like was there the case in the Old Testament where you are male and multiple females, which is what is polygamy. Polygamy, the patriarchs in the Old Testament, is a distortion of the original idea of marriage between one man and one woman for life. This was God's intention. But polygamy is a distortion of that. Polyandry is also a distortion of that. Okay. All these things, homosexuality, lesbianism, polygamy, polyandry, all these are distortions of what God intended. And polygamy is a distortion, or polyandry is a distortion of the personalistic norm. Because now it's like, what is a personalistic norm? The personalistic norm says that I need to be a gift to somebody else. How can I be a gift to one and another person and another person and another person? It just doesn't make sense, because if I am a gift, that means that gift I belong to someone. I am exclusive. Okay. Marriage is exclusive. I can only be married to one woman and one woman only. That means I exclude every other woman in my life. Okay. So when we talk about marriage, it has to be exclusive. It cannot be polygamy. I cannot get married to multiple people. It's again against natural law, because again I'm not going to be respecting any human being if I give myself as a gift to multiple people. It just, as per even normal philosophical thinking, it's coming to this conclusion that marriage is exclusive between one male and one female for life. So again, the line is, the personalistic now demands that marriage be monogamous and indissoluble, because only in this way is the dignity of the person fully respected. And then marriage leads to family, which is an institution based on marriage. Society cannot legislate on the family without recognizing what marriage is meant for: love between spouses and openness to life. Now, we have, I mean, just recently you had President Biden of the United States of America having the rainbow flag, I mean, rainbow lights on the White House, and declaring that marriage between one man and one man and one woman and one woman is perfectly fine. So society has already started legislating on this and deciding that families can be of multiple types. They've not really understood what marriage is, or maybe they've understood what marriage is and they want to defy what and stand in defiance of what that is. You can take, I don't know 100% whether it is the first one or the second. Maybe it is the second. Probably they've not really reflected and understood why they exist on earth and what God created them for. I don't know. So again, since marriage, according to the current norms, is like that, contraception kind of flows into that structure, because a male and a male so-called getting married, which is not true. The word marriage cannot be used in that context with them. They're already contracepting, because there cannot be life. A woman and woman getting together, there cannot be life. There's already contracepted. And contraception violates the personalistic norm, because by contraception, the man and woman do not become a gift to each other in the fullness of the term. It just doesn't make sense. Marital relationship must give justice to God the Creator by being open to life which flows from God. This is the true essence of what marriage is and what God created us to be. And this is how we give respect to the Creator. And this is what John Paul II has taught us in this book, Love and Responsibility. So I'll just take takeaways very quickly. To love means to be chaste. It's absolutely, absolutely, absolutely essential. To love means to be chaste, to be pure, to be holy, to be treasured as something which is exclusive. And chastity enables a person to be in complete possession of his sexual desires and feelings. That is what chastity is. And concupiscence, I'm sorry, there's a typo there. Concupiscence is the germ of sin, which when acted upon by the person's will leads to an act of sin. Okay, so because of our fallen nature, because since we are human beings and we have a fallen nature, concupiscence is there in us, and that germ of sin is there in us, but it has to be acted upon by the person's will. Now, if the person doesn't know the truth, then you will be led astray. And nowadays, especially in the aspect of sexuality, we are constantly being led astray. And then again comes back to what the statement which I mentioned earlier, what John Paul II said: the abuse of sexuality is the main obstacle to spirituality. And that's primarily what's happening in our society. Even in India, slowly but steadily, this thing is creeping in from the West. And we think that everything from the West is best. It's not. Yeah. Marriage has to be indissoluble, monogamous. Only then will reflect the true intention of the Creator. And family is an institution based on marriage, and contraception, obviously within the family, violates the law of the gift. So if you can remember these takeaways and let that, let these thoughts just, if you reflect in your head and let it sink in your hearts, slowly but steadily, the perspective that you have about life and how we are supposed to live on earth will change. And that, as Jesus said, the truth will set us free. With that, I think I'm going to close today. So if you have any discussions, any questions or anything of that sort, I'm free to take it. I'm free to take. And maybe if there are no question answer, if you want to discuss among ourselves, that's also possible. So if we just take a little time and do that.
Anyway, thank you so much for the wonderful session. It was so enlightening. So I have a question which somebody posted to me, wanted to be asked anonymously. So I'll ask you.
I'll try and answer to
You
the
can
best
answer,
of my
for
ability.
sure. Okay, only half your effort is needed. Okay.
Sorry.
A couple is married and have kids and ready to have more, but in between they engage each other for a little pleasure as they are one body. What's the problem? As sexual need is a natural 1 second, natural is natural, and we have to keep a little gap between children, right? Why church is so adamant about this?
So, I mean, let me just try and say what I understood from the question. Okay. So then, so hopefully I'll be able to answer. That means, let's say they're married and they already have some, let's say a few children. I don't know. Okay. And let's say in between, they want to contracept. Correct? I think that's a question.
The
question
is
that?
not it's not very evident. Yeah, but we can take it like that.
We
can take
it
that way.
To be that, no? They're using the word in between.
I want to have pleasure.
Have a little pleasure, no?
Absolutely, yes.
I mean, probably read between the lines and understand that that is probably what is intended.
Yes.
Now, let's understand one thing. Why is it? I mean, I'm sorry, I'm going to raise another question. Why is it that we think that pleasure is wrong? Just think about it. I mean, because the way it is framed, no? See, okay, we had one child, let's say, okay, and then let's have a little pleasure. Okay. So somehow, as if having that pleasure is kind of wrong. Okay. But at the same time, we want to have it. So can we have a little, time where we can have it and then we can go back to have children? No? I mean, that seems to be the case. So our whole understanding of pleasure is completely wrong. Who said that pleasure is supposed to be wrong? God intended for us to have pleasure. Pleasure is not something which was invented by Satan. Pleasure is something which is invented by God himself. Let's be clear about that. First thing. Now, because God intended us to have pleasure, God also put the norms for pleasure. Okay. Because let's understand something. Freedom, it's like, if I can give an analogy, I don't want to make this answer a long one, but I'll try and shorten it as much as I can. Our understanding sometimes of freedom is this, that freedom means I can do whatever I want. Well, if that is the case, then if I'm driving or if I'm riding a bike or whatever, then why do I stop at a red light? I can do whatever I want. No, I can just ride through the red signal. I can do whatever I want. Why should a red light, restrict my freedom? So this is a question which comes up as freedom. But freedom, really speaking, is not that. Freedom means that I am free to do the right thing. That is what freedom is. Okay. Because if I am free to do the right thing, then only will I be really free. If I am going to do something wrong, that means I am being forced to do something wrong. Okay. Nobody, something is compelling me from external, something which is a lie is compelling me from within me because I'm a fallen creature, or from outside me, which is compelling me to do something wrong. And through that act, I am now becoming a slave to that act. And then I am not actually enjoying freedom. I am becoming a slave to sin. Okay. So freedom, really speaking, is to do good. So God intended pleasure to be enjoyed in the confines of marital relationship with a particular set of norms which are instituted so that the fruit may also be good and the means may also be good. Okay, only then can everything be good. So pleasure is intended to be a part of a spousal relationship which should be open to the possibility of life. Okay, when you deny that possibility, then you are not just violating pleasure, you are also violating life. Okay, so in that way, what you're doing is violating God's command. It seems to suggest in some way that by during the course of maybe having that child, they were not having pleasure. Is that the case? Of course not, no? So my answer, I'm sorry, it's a long-winded one, but the answer is quite simple. God intended for us to have pleasure, but pleasure has to be, demarcated or ordered in the right way so that that might be good. Okay. Only then can we truly call ourselves free.
So to counter,
it's a satisfactory answer. I don't know.
Yeah, it is satisfactory, but I was contrasting. So it means that if we have pleasure outside of how God commanded us, it will end up in totality bad for us.
Yes, true.
Okay, so in a way we can also say that since God has made the overall law and created us, if we misuse the whole creative plan, indirectly or directly, it'll end up bad for us. So for our own good and for the good of the whole humanity, it is good for us to follow God's commandments.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay. I think that's good enough.
Because just want to add one more line. Sometimes we tend to think that the 10 commandments are restrictive. Okay. But the 10 commandments are there because God loves us. Okay. And the second thing also about the 10 commandments is that we think the 10 commandments is only for Christians. No, it was first given to the Jews. Okay. So in giving it to the Jews, he meant it to be given to the whole of humanity. So the 10 commandments is for everyone because it's based on natural law. So the law which God ordained is for everyone. And the law, if we follow, is good for us. And that is how we do justice to our creator, which was the last fourth chapter that we were discussing.
Okay, thanks, Shiva. I have one more question.
Yes.
You mentioned about the drive, or sexual drive which we have to the opposite sex.
Yes.
So, which is a reason for good of the procreation. It also ends up bad when we misuse it. So,
Correct.
what is the purpose or the need of for this drive?
Oh, it's like asking what is the need for an engine in a car?
Okay.
I'm sorry, I have to put it like that. What is the
Yeah,
need for an engine in a car?
understood. To drive the whole vehicle.
Exactly.
Yeah, yeah.
That is the essential aspect of the sexual urge within me. Because without the sexual urge, I will never be participating in any procreative act.
Okay.
I will
So the
never be able to participate in any procreative act.
correct.
So that is ordained towards, that is demarcated towards procreation. Without that attraction, without that drive within me, I will never even be attracted.
Correct.
That
Yes.
attraction is essential. The problem is when the attraction is misused, or the attraction, if I can use John Paul's language, the attraction is used in the sense that when I become, when the person of the opposite sex, or nowadays same sex or whatever, is used, because then the person becomes a person object for my gratification. Then it is a complete misuse of that attraction. But that attraction should make me become a gift to the other person. Only then will that attraction be helpful.
Okay. I think
I'll leave it there.
it's clear. Yeah. So others who are here, please feel free to post your questions, ask, unmute, put in the chat. Personally, put a Dominic by. Want me to ask me anonymously? I can post it to Dominic by. Please feel free to do it now.
Can you speak something about masturbation, like for youth, or like, like I have a query in my mind since long. Like, suppose a spouse is no more, okay, met with an accident or is no more in the life, and suppose the other person who is there is not willing to get married for the children, maybe living for the children. But as you said, pleasure is something that is born natural in human being.
Hmm.
So that particular person, either the man or the woman, may get that sexual urge at
Hmm.
some point of a time. Maybe not on the initial stage because of depression or stress, but
Yes.
after certain years may get that feeling.
Hmm.
So if that person is doing this masturbation, which is known as a sin actually in Catholic Church,
Hmm.
so what if that person is doing it not for pleasure, not for like worldly pleasure, but that something, that feeling gets into it and doing it? Will that be a sin again?
Okay. The What is masturbation? Masturbation is using one's own faculty for one's own pleasure. Okay, that's a basic definition. What does it mean to be a gift? It's a complete contrast. When I am a gift to my spouse, I am concerned about her completely, not about me. I'm interested in giving her the pleasure, not me. That is how I become loving. That is love. That is being a gift. Because if I am a gift, then I am meant to be for the other person. Correct? I can't use the word property because I'm not a property, but I am meant for the other person. Only then can I truly become fulfilled in my own life. Because, like what Jesus says in the gospel, he says, in giving you receive. Okay. Now, let's say, like what your question has come up, the person, the spouse has passed away, doesn't want to get into another marriage. Fair enough, nothing wrong with that. But at the same time, wants to enjoy sexual pleasure. Are you being a gift? Not being a gift. You're using your own faculties for your own pleasure. I think I've answered the question. I don't think I need to answer anything more. I'm not trying to condemn anybody, but let's be honest about it. I'm not trying to put anybody down, but let's be honest about it. What does it really mean to be a gift? It means I'm supposed to give. That's it. The person is no longer there. Then
Just
I give myself in prayer for the sake of the person. That be a gift to myself to the person, but not in this manner. I hope that answers the question. I really hope so.
just to support your answer,
Yeah.
it could also be possible that I'm just asking you that though this act is definitely out or not out of law, and it's a selfish act. So the person may think that I'm doing it for my pleasure to satisfy my desire. It eventually can may lead to many other wrong things. They could be seeing pornography or thinking of something else, then be driven or attracted to do something more bigger wrong out of this. On the contrary, let's say if the person has taken care of the faculty out of love, in sacrifice, in chastity, that would may add more good for the family in the totality. I'm just asking, is there not a possibility?
Yeah, I mean, I get what you're trying to say, but then let's be honest about that. You know, the question of one sin leading to another sin is it's pretty normal. Okay. My simple point was why the first sin in the first place? Why that thing in the first place? Because if I can avoid that first step itself, then I will not lead to the other, subsequent steps. Cut it off at the root itself, so that I don't land up in other problems. Because obviously, let's be honest about it. Masturbation in whatever manner we may speak, there is a visual element attached to it. And in that visual element, now let's say even if you're, I mean, I hate to say it, but even if you're having the image of your own spouse, correct, who's dead and gone, will you be doing justice to that person? Of course not, because you are again bringing the person's image into your mind. And sorry to put it that way, you're using the person for your own gratification. And it doesn't serve anybody's purpose. Obviously, like what Dino said, it would lead to further complications down the line.
Okay. Thanks, Rita. Any other question?
You want to discuss something among ourselves, also we're free. I know most of us may not know each other. I don't know if anyone knows each other. In fact, I really don't know most of the people who are just attending.
Anybody else? Any questions? Feel free to ask. Okay. I think that we can done now.
Yeah. If I can make a suggestion, I was trying to, because this is going to be a long kind of journey. Okay. So just a suggestion. Uh, just by listening to these sessions, you may not be able to take a session for someone else. I mean, at least hopefully you'll be able to imbibe something in your own life, and hopefully you may be able to transform our own lives to some extent. Okay. But it'll be beneficial if we can actually read. So I would suggest this book. It's actually a pretty thin book. If you can see, I'm deliberately showing it from the side. It's not a very big book. It's a very thin book. And I have mentioned that in the, when the books were raised, this book is also mentioned. So I'm again showing this book to you. It's Theology of the Body in Context by William E. May. Okay. So I was trying to look at Amazon and Flipkart and all those places to get, but I don't seem to have found it. This was purchased by me a long time ago, so that time it was available. I don't know whether it's right now currently available in St. Paul's also. So, but if you can get this book, I feel it will be something which is very, very, uh, very good, because uh, he not just talks about love and responsibility. He goes on to talk about theology of the body. Then he goes on to talk about familiar responsatio and dignitas. I mean, sorry, mulieris dignitatem, which is on the letter of John Paul II to women. So all these things are discussed here, which is it's a very good compilation. I think so. Of course, there are other books by Christopher West and Jason Evert and all that, which are also equally excellent, um, which can also benefit. But this, I don't know. I'm tilting towards this because not because the other books are bad. Okay, don't think that way. But this I felt is a very good compilation of what the thought of John Paul II is. That's what I feel. So that's my suggestion. If anyone can get the books, I right now don't seem to find the sources for that. So I'm not compelling anybody. Don't think that way. Uh, because I think right now it's a foreign edition print, so it might be quite expensive also. So I'm not compelling anybody. But if you can, then okay. But other than that, I think probably if you can, anyone can, if you can get a Kindle edition of Jason Evert's Theology of the Body in 1 hour, it's a decent primer. It will really help. But reading would help. That's what I feel. So I'll stop there.
Is it different from Jason Evert's Theology of Body, this book, or the concept is the
If
same?
if you have read Jason Evert's Theology of the Body in 1 hour, okay,
Mhm.
that is uh, it's quite good. I'm nothing against Jason Evert, nothing against all that. But what I'm saying is, this guy gives a little more, um,
In-depth concepts.
yeah, I feel in a very simple way he's condensed the whole thing.
Okay.
Okay. Because he's not just talking about, see, Jason Everett is only focusing on the theology of the body,
Yes.
the core content. Okay. Here he is talking about the background and how John Paul II has come up to that. Okay. And he's talking about, again, like we said, see, this book is quite thick and it's quite dense. It's not just big letters. It's actually quite, if we can
Mhm.
randomly pick up the page. Okay. And to read this book, let me tell you, it's not easy. Okay, it's dense philosophical content, and I'm kind of trying to summarize the whole thing and giving it to you. Okay, I'm not trying to boast, but it's not an easy job. Okay, uh, but this guy makes it quite simple. Okay, so this is the launching pad, really speaking, to the theology of the body. This really is the launching pad. So if we get to the philosophical background of how John Paul II develops the theology of the body, I believe it will be a good foundation. Okay, like if, like I'm sorry if I can put it this way, If anyone has understood a little bit of priestly formation, okay, you go through the novitiate and then you go through, philosophy, and then you go through theology. And in philosophy, obviously, if you're studying in any Indian seminary, they will be taught Indian philosophy also. Okay. But the reasoning part would help in understanding theology in a better way. So I would say that this is helpful. That's what I would like to say. Not that Jason Evert is bad. He's excellent in his own way. So you're free to choose. But I'm giving you my preference. I'm not saying that any other book is bad. Or there is another book by Men and Women Are from Eden by Mary Healy. That's also a wonderful book. If anyone can get that and read. But reading would help. That's all I'm trying to say. Reading a book on this subject, along with these sessions that by the grace of God I'm able to take, would be helpful, which will be, able to develop our own knowledge.
I just checked in Amazon, it's available, but it's very important.
Yeah, but I think it's quite expensive.
Yeah, it's around 17,000.
That's the problem. So if you can get an Indian edition, I don't know where to get it. That's the problem. I think St. Paul's has got a print, but I think it's out of stock. I'm not sure. So
check.
It's helpful. Just a suggestion. I'm not forcing anybody. So
yeah, no problem. Okay, thanks a lot. I hope no further question. We will wind for the day with a short prayer. In the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit. Amen. Lord, we thank you for this day. Thank you for the brother Dominic and all the people who joined here and asked questions and understood. Lord, we surrender all of us our wisdom, knowledge, understanding, so we open our minds and hearts to live the beauty of body and life which you have created for us. And intercede for us, be with us always. Hail Mary, full of grace, the Lord is with you. Blessed are you amongst women, and blessed is the fruit of thy womb, Jesus.
Holy Mary, Mother of God, pray for us sinners now and at the hour of our death. Amen.
The glory be to the Father, and the Son, and the Holy Spirit.
As to us, the beginning is now and ever shall be.
Peace be with you all. Okay, thanks a lot. See you by next Wednesday again for the next session. Thank you. God bless
11th,
you.
11th.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Thank you. Good night. God bless.
Good night. God bless. Bye bye.
Bye bye.